New Development Bank fourth annual meeting wraps up in Cape Town today. For more on this, we crossed our reporter Manelisi Dubase. A very good afternoon to you, Manelisi. Talk to us about what happened during the course of these meetings.
What was the focus today in Zinga was the financing of infrastructure for sustainable development. The figures that were toyed around with here are quite amazing. I mean, the cost for a global demand of infrastructure is put at 90 trillion rand. That is between now and 2030. South Africa alone will need between now and 2030 almost over R1 trillion to develop its infrastructure because most of the infrastructure in South Africa is there, but the problem is that most of it is old. The energy sector, the transport sector, you can understand if you see the rail system is quite old and it's dilapidating. They will need at least more than R1 trillion between now and then, and added to that, they need to meet the Millennium Development Goals as put up front by the United Nations. That will mean that they need to provide people with clean drinking water. That's part of infrastructure with sanitation. It's part of our schools, especially in rural areas here in South Africa, still doesn't have toilets. I mean, people are still going to the bushes to help themselves. So it's a massive job, and they still need to find money to do that. So they need to expand the reach of the BRICS Bank so that they access markets elsewhere in Asia and even here in Africa, on cheaper rates, so that they can get this money, so that they start to work hard in trying to meet these Millennium Development Goals by improving infrastructure in these member countries and beyond.
Manelisi, we also saw yesterday Finance Minister Tito Mboweni speaking about how he had met with the different finance ministers from those BRICS nations. Do we know what kind of discussions came out of there following the themes that you've just touched on?
Well, some of the discussions were about how do they improve lending to their member countries. For instance, the point Tito Mboweni was making and the argument he was making to his colleagues is that, to lend money to South Africa alone sometimes it doesn't achieve what South Africa needs to achieve, because he says that South Africa's economy is so intertwined with the economies in the region. For instance, South Africa get a part of Gauteng, in fact the whole of Gauteng and parts of the country get water from Lesotho, and that infrastructure belongs to Lesotho, but the water is used by South Africans. So when they lend to South Africa, they need to have this in their mind, that the infrastructure that is going to be developed is not actually within the boundaries of South Africa but in Lesotho. Same as the energy infrastructure, where part of our energy come from the Cabora Bassa in Mozambique. So he was making a very strong argument that the next time when they lend South Africa, when they give South Africa, for instance, Eskom, which has signed a loan agreement of $180 million, that money is used to develop infrastructure not only to serve South Africa but beyond the border. So that was a point he was making. I know that is a case he also hinted here during the open session, and he went to that board of governors to make that point that the BRICS Bank need to consider that South Africa has got a very peculiar situation than other member countries.
Manelisi, who did we see represented at these meetings in Cape Town?
Sorry, I didn't get you there.
Just talk to us about the kind of people who are attending these meetings in Cape Town. Was there a strong contingent from any particular country? Just give us a breakdown of that.
Well, I think it was fairly balanced, but what was encouraging here is the number of people from the private sector here in South Africa. All the 4 or 5 largest banks in South Africa were represented at the highest level. I mean, there was a chairperson of Nedbank who just made the presentation right here. But across all the other development agencies, IDC was here, including the SOEs, high-profile people from from Eskom, from Transnet, from SAA. All of them were here, from PRASA. The chairperson, Ms. Kwayama, was here. So it was just people across, and several cabinet ministers also made a turn here, both from these member countries, South Africa, Brazil, China, India, and Brazil. So I would say that it was quite a very, very well-attended meeting.
Manelisi Dubase giving us a live update from those meetings in Cape Town.